Howdy, folks, and welcome to another day in the Milky Way. Tonight we got a good show for you. By gosh, we got some good things going on. I got this new book. It's Life on the Frontier. It's a really old book. It is, I managed to pick it up. It's called Forest and Prairie, Life on the Frontier by Emerson Bennett. It's got a lot of cool stories in here. So I thought I would share with all of you. So I hope you can join me. I would like to show you all the pictures it's got. It's got cool pictures in there like this. Of course, I don't want to rip all the pages. This was printing in 1889. The copyright by John E. Potter and Company in Philadelphia. Okay. Let's see, by the author. It's got lots of good stories in here. The Mingo Chief, the Kentucky Hero, the Maid of Fort Henry, wrecked on a lake, the Leap for Life, the Desperate Encounter, and it goes on and on and on. It's got some really good stories in here. Anyway, cut to the chase. We're going to start out and we're going to go to the Mingo Chief. Now, there is a story in here, and I haven't found it which one it is yet, but it's about, it's called Fight with a Bear. It's the story of Hugh Glass. If you haven't heard of Hugh Glass, he's the guy that the story was about in The Revenant. Remember, that was a big story on, that was a big TV or movie. So anyway, check that out. But tonight, of course, I got good stuff to share with you as always. And always I will share the best I can probably do. We're going to get to that screen share because you don't want to look at my ugly mug all the time. Look at that. Hot diggity dog. We have a picture. Anyway, okay, the Mingo Chief. This is kind of good. It's not a very long story. It's easily written. It's half a dozen or dozen pages or so. So we'll get through this in one show. So let's get on with it. Sit back, enjoy, get your favorite cup of joe or hot chocolate. Well, it's at the time here, it's kind of summer, so we're going to go with a cool glass of lemonade. How about that? Okay, the Mingo Chief. We talk of ferocity and vindictiveness, the treachery and the cruelty of the native savage, and painting him in the darkest color. Tell how, when his hunting grounds covered the sites of our now proudest cities, he wouldn't want to steal down upon a few harmless whites, our forefathers, and butcher them in cold blood, sparing neither sex nor age, except for a painful captivity to the end, perhaps, in the most demonic tortures. And we dwell upon the theme till our little innocent children shudder and creep close to our sides and look fearfully around them, and perhaps wonder how the good God of whom they have also heard us speak could ever have permitted such human monsters to encumber his fair and beautiful earth. But do we reverse the medal and show the picture which impartial truth has stamped upon the other side, and which in great measure stands as a cause to the opposite effect, stands as a cause for savage ferocity, vindictiveness, and treachery and cruelty? Do we tell our young and eager listeners that the poor Indian living up to the light he had, and not unfrequently beyond it, knew no better than to turn like a worm when trampled upon, and bite the foot of that crushed him? That we had taken the land of his father's graves and driven him from his birthright hunting grounds, that we have stolen his cattle, robbed him of his food, and destroyed his growing fields, burned his wigwams, and murdered his brother's father, his wives, and the little ones, besides instigating tribe to war against tribe, war upon war. And that, not knowing nothing of the Christian code to return good for evil, he fulfilled and the law of his nature and education in taking his great revenge upon any of the pale face race he should chance to meet. No, we seldom show this side of the medal, for the nature inquiry of the innocent listener might contain an unpleasant rebuke. Father, were we savages together then? But I have a story to tell you, so listen. More than 80 years ago, when the great West was a howling wilderness, and mighty unbroken forests stretched away for hundreds of miles and covered the broad, fertile lands of West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Kentucky, and so onward to the vast prairies beyond the Father of rivers and unraveled Mississippi. Forests that threw twilight over the gliding, purling, or rushing streams and gave wild freedom to the bear, the buffalo, and the panther, and the deer. More than 80 years ago, I say, on a fine, pleasant spring day, a party of border hunters were encamped upon the of left bank of the Ohio, above the present site of Wheeling, which then boasted only a single trading fort and was considered the extreme frontier. The party numbered more than a dozen strong, hardy, bronze-visaged men, dressed in true border fashion, with green hunting frocks, caps, buckskin trousers and leggings, and moccasins. And they were armed with rifles, tomahawks, and knives. They had built themselves a temporary cabin and fished and hunted in the vicinity for several days, and fur and game and articles of traffic were strewn carelessly about their cabin, which had been erected rather for the purpose of protecting their goods and weapons from the weather than for sheltering themselves, for your border lies to sleep in the open air. The party was about to break up camp and return to the eastward, and some were packing their furs and skins, and some were cleaning their rifles, and some were mending their torn garments, and some were lounging idly about, smoking and drinking and stretching their huge limbs, and wishing for some keen excitement to rouse their sluggish natures. Yeah, let's go there. They have a cabin. A cabin. Yes, let's go see the cabin. We have a cabin somewhere. There we go. They erected a cabin. The leader of this party, a man of fair proportions, but with a low brow, brushy hair, a snarly eye, and a red, rough, ferocious-looking countenance, was standing apart from the others, leaning upon his rifle, thinking wicked thoughts and planning wicked deeds. Suddenly, he, wheeling about and drawing near his men, said in a harsh voice, "Boys, there's a bad business going back without nara scalp. What'll the people think of us? I tell you, boys, we must raise some red top knots, or our reputation'll spile by shore." "There's Injuns out there, the other side of the river," replied a big, double-fisted, coarse-feathered fellow who was smoking his pipe, with his back braced against a huge sycamore. Suppose you just go over, Cap, and take what you want. It's modus to be a easy gritting back, replied the first speaker, and I ain't no inclined to take a scalp and at the risk of mine. If we could only get a few of them over here. Why, so you can, Cap. Why, so you can, Cap. If only you could keep quiet, for there comes a few now, answered one. The other, taking his corncob pipe from his mouth and pointing with stem across the river to a canoe filled with Indians. Bah, Sam, cried the first speaker, using an oath that we will not repeat. I hope they'll come across. If they do, we'll have fun. I'll go down and beckon them over. And hastened down to the water's edge, the leader of the whites made friendly signs to the Indians in the canoe, inviting them to cross the river to his camp. And the Indians came across without apparent fear or hesitation, 5 men and 1 woman, with an infant in her arms. Oh, let's go back to this one. No, let's go back to this one. 5 men and a woman and an infant in her arms. 2 of them, one quite advanced in years, was fine, athletic, noble, looking for specimens of humanity. And the woman, the daughter of one, and the sister of the other, was more than usually comely and had a soft, dark eye, a mild, pleasant-looking countenance, and a sweet, musical voice. All landed and shook hands with the leader of the whites, who seemed greatly pleased to meet with them and invited them up to his cabin to take a drink. 3 of the Indians readily accepted the invitation, but the 3 we have mentioned declined. The venerable head of the party observing with a smile, "Rum no good for Injun. Make drunk come. Me buy tobacco. Tobacco good for smoke." And while 3 of the party entered the cabin and drank the liquor poured them, the other 3, including the woman with the infant, remained outside and opened a trade with the leader of the whites for tobacco and powder, paying for the same in a current coin of the frontier, pelts and furs, of which they had on hand a good stock. An hour passed away in friendly barter, and then the old man signified his intentions of recrossing the river. He stepped into the cabin and found 3 of his party. Yinging on the ground, or laying on the ground, and had so intoxicated as not to be conscious of anything going on around them. "Ah, me said rum bad for poor Injun," observed the old warrior. "Him take Injun sense, make him worse as beast." He called his son to him and something in his native tongue, and 2 were about to begin to remove their helpless comrades when the leader of the whites, who had been holding a short consultation with his men, came in and said, "Afore you go, my boys, I want you to shoot at a mark. I hear you're some at a good shot." "Me hit dollar," returned the old man, with gratified vanity. "Come on, we put up the mark, and if you hit it, I'll give you a pound of tobacco, and if you don't, you're going to give me that deer skin." The old warrior and his son went out and looked at the mark, and the former said, "Me bet." "And will you try too?" said the leader of the whites to the son of the Indian sage. "Me bet," was the answer, quite the quiet answer. "Fire away then. You shoot first." The son said something to his father. The old warrior nodded, and the young man, drawing himself up and taking deliberate aim, fired. "Hit by," said the white leader, as the white mark, the size of $1, showed a hole near its center. "Ah, good shot. Come on, old man. Let's see what you got or you can do." "Me beat him," said father with a smile. He raised his rifle and slowly brought it to a level and fired and drove the pin through the center. "Now, boys," said the white ruffian. "All right, give 'em hell." And at that word he raised his own rifle and shot the old man through the brain, who fell back dead. And the next instant his son fell upon him, a ghastly corpse, pierced by 4 bullets from many rifles in hand of the whites. The poor woman with the infant in her arms, who was standing apart from the crowd, looking quietly on, uttered a shriek of horror on seeing her father and brother thus inhumanly butchered, and clasping her offspring to her bosom, ran swiftly toward the river. But crack went some half a dozen rifles, and she too fell to the earth, mortally wounded but not dead. The first who reached her was the leader of the whites, who, grasping her infant, roughly raised his tomahawk to give the poor innocent mother the finishing blow. Oops, that's too far. There we go. Some blows. "Spare my child," shrieked the dying mother, with a look of affection, pleading anguishedly that would have melted the heart of a stone. "Child got white fodder. Child, one of you. Spare poor child." She said no more, for the hatchet of the white fiend at the instant crashed through her brain, and her spirit was set free to roam the hunting grounds of her faith with the spirits of her father and brother. "Give me that child, Dan," said the brother of the white leader, who reached his side just as he was about to dash out its brains. "I reckon I know its father, and we'll make him pay." The bloody ruffian gave him the infant, accompanied with a savage oath, and whipping out his knife, he bent over the dead mother and tore off her scalp. The whole work of butchery was now complete, for while these events were taking place outside the cabin, another fiend within had chopped to pieces the drunken Indians, and now came swaggering forth, shaking 3 gory scalps in triumph. "Now, boys," said the white leader, "we got a good show, and let's make clean tracks for some udder red get udder out of our hair." And hastily they stripped the dead of everything of value, broke up the camp, and departed for some interior settlements, taking the poor motherless infant with them. Meantime, the Indians on the other side of the river, being witness to the horrible massacre, hurried into their only remaining canoe and rowed swiftly down the Ohio. Oh, I got a canoe picture here somewhere. Okay, they roared swiftly down the Ohio. On passing the fort at Wheeling, they were espied, and chase was given by the party of whites. Far below they were overtaken. A short fight ensued, and another of their party was killed, the others making their escape through the deep, dark forest. While the bloody events we have recorded were taking place on the Ohio, a grand council of chiefs and warriors were convened at the Indian town in the interior of what is now the state of Ohio. They were deliberating upon the propriety of digging up the hatchet and going to war against the whites, who were fast encroaching upon their homes and hunting grounds, and judging from the precedents would soon require them to leave again for the still far west. Most of the chiefs were for war, But there was one brave and eloquent man among them who spoke for peace, and spoke with such reason, power, and a path that he carried his point over strong opposition, and the pipe of peace was smoked in the council house of the assembled nations. The brave and eloquent chief had ever raised his voice for peace between the white man and the red, because as he said, the same great spirit had made them all and designed them to be brothers, and the earth was large enough and rich enough in forests and streams and game to give them all shelter, food, and happy homes. His earnest eloquence conquered the fiery war spirit of his fierce comrades, and he was rejoicing in his peaceful triumph when, lo, a poor Indian, half dead with hunger and fatigue, appeared before him and told him how his father, brother, and sister had been brutally butchered by his pale-faced friends. Instantly, the dark eye of his chief of peace gathered a storm of fire and shot forth lighting glances of anger. His mighty voice before the reassembled chiefs and warriors of many nations was so heard, thundering, "War! War! War!" War upon the pale faces, war upon the long knives, death to all their of either sex and every age, and the cry of war, 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 death to the pale faces, death to the long knives was echoed and re-echoed with wild, savage shouts by many hundreds. Oh, fierce, painted, half naked savage men, and down upon the unprotected frontiers poured a fiercely dusky horde of human beings whose rally war cry was revenge, revenge! And the old men and infants and young men and white maidens and men in their prime of life, and wives and mothers were rousted at the midnight hour by those yells of vengeance, and were butchered in their cabins, scalped on their hearthstones, and burned with their burning homes. "I will have 10 scalps for every kin of mine slain," said the chief of blood, so lately as chief of peace. And ere the war, so terribly and suddenly begun, was closed by a treaty of peace, 30 human scalps, 30 pale-faced scalps hung dangling at his glory belt. This war is known in history as Lord Dumore's War. The men of peace, roused to such bloody deeds by the aggressions of his white brothers, was the world-renowned Logan, the Mingo Chief. And we got a picture of Logan right here. Logan, the Mingo Chief. The leader of the party who butchered his relatives was Daniel Greathouse. The leader of the party who sailed from the fort at Wheeling and followed the slough, one of the flying fugitives, was Captain Cresap. Logan always supposed it was Cresap who murdered his relatives, and his celebrated speech sent the Lord Dumore at the Treaty of Peace, for he profoundly refused to appear in person. He mentions him as the cause of the war. We quote his speech, derived at Old Chillicothe town and sent to Governor Dumore at Camp Charlotte. At one of the finest specimens of eloquent excellence, "I appeal to any white man to say if I've ever entered Logan's cabin hungry, I gave him not meat. If ever he came cold and naked, I gave him not clothing." During the course of the last long bloody war, Logan remained in his tent, an advocate for peace. Nay, such was the love for the whites that those of my own country pointed at me as they passed and said, Logan is the friend of white man. I had even thought of to live white man with you, but for the injuries of one man. Colonel Cresap, the last spring, in cool blood and unprovoked, cut off the relatives of Logan, not sparing even my women and children. There runs not a drop of my blood in the veins of any human creature. This called on me for revenge. I have sought it. I have killed many. I have fully gutted my vengeance for my country. My rejoice at the beams of peace. Yet I do not labor or harbor the thought that mine is the joy of fear. Logan never felt fear. He will not turn on his heel to save his life. Who is there to mourn for Logan? No one. Reader, you who are now sitting in judgment upon the deeds of the past, I challenge you to say that the white man was always the Christian and the red man always the fiend. Well, there we go. And that was the story of the Mingo Chief. All right, stop sharing. Well, I hope y'all enjoyed that. That was the see, I told you it was short. I hope you enjoyed that. That was called the Mingo Chief. It was about Logan. We did some short stories about Logan before, and I hope you enjoyed that one. The next one we got the Kentucky Hero. And I am going to read through this first. That's another short one, a little longer, I think, than the other one, but it is still pretty good. And then the Maid of Fort Henry. But I think I might fast forward into the one about the bear, But anyway, good story, nice little book. It's really old. I got to treat it really well. Cost me a pretty penny, I tell you that. You don't find books like that much anymore. But I appreciate each and every one of you for coming tonight, listen to my crazy stories and interesting things that interest me. And I hope that it interests you too, because, hey, it's all fun. Sometimes it's good to hear this history. And what did we get out of this? I'm sure somebody will say, why are you reading that stuff? I'm going to say, because we learn from history. We learn from our past mistakes. Somebody trusts and somebody doesn't. And, people are people. I think Logan was right. It doesn't matter. We're all humans. Treat your other human being friends as friends, and we're all one. Just because we have different colored skin or different attitudes or whatever doesn't make us any different. We are humans. We're all together in this. If we just work together and get along, this world would be a better place. So remember, go out, do something nice for somebody else, do something nice for yourself. Sometimes you got to look at yourself and do something nice for yourself. So do that, go out and, maybe splurge and buy yourself an ice cream or something, or whatever you like to do, treat yourself good. And with that, remember, go out, be the frequency you want to receive, everyone. Love y'all. Peace, everybody.